Well, good day to you. It is May the 18th. I hope you are doing really well wherever you happen to be. My name is Gary Willing. I want to welcome everyone to Search for Signs. And as I always like to do, just kind of point out to those people who are new, if you look to the right or left of whatever the video is you're watching, or beneath it or whatever, there is a description portion about the video. But there's also links to the to websites that have really good background information about what we talk about here. And you can get a lot of your questions answered that way. You can see if there's any truth to this information for yourself by doing that. And even if you've heard these videos before, if you haven't done it already, I always encourage you to do it. Now, if you have a question or two, feel free to post your question in the comment section. Email me at searchforsigns@mail.com. And as I always like to do, it gives me something to talk about in the next video, but you can just listen to the next video, and unless I run out of time, and I'll tell you that I ran out of time, and I record my answer to those questions in the next video. Now, if you want to just let me know what you think, you're somebody that just wants to tell me what you think, well, feel free to post your comment in the comment section. And sometimes I address those comments as well because they get me thinking. So hopefully they get you thinking. And now I know these questions got me thinking. I had a few from a couple different people. Wild Humans, 8116. Do you think Maitreya will have full knowing of who he is already, or would it be a shock for him? Well, the simplest answer is he is completely aware of who he is. He doesn't need someone to tell him who he is, and then he discovers his purpose that way like it is in the movies. He doesn't have to have some kind of personal trauma wake up that truth in him or anything like that. He is fully aware of who he is at every moment of every day and has been for millions of years. Now, these masters, all of these masters, do not have to incarnate on this planet anymore. They're totally free. There were some symbols in the Bible that were put in there, some historical events of Jesus' life were put in such a way to symbolize the path that everybody, all of humanity without exception, have to take in order to become a master, whether they're aware of these stages or not. The birth, the baptism, the transfiguration, the crucifixion, and the resurrection. And once they become a resurrected master, they do not have to go back and do it again or anything like that. They don't make mistakes and slip up and have to redo anything. They are a perfected master. And that is the guarantee of every single man, woman, and child living on this planet today, no matter how awful the person is. That's the guarantee that eventually they will awaken to the truth within them too, just as these masters had to, and then eventually become, through courses of a certain amount of lifetimes, become fully aware of it and then manifest that love, that divinity perfectly. So none of these masters have to incarnate. Now, how do they have the bodies that they have? Right now, there's three ways. The first way, I don't know if this is the most common, but there are several masters that this is the case. And I'll use the Master Jesus as an example for this. He was born, according to Ben's master, 600 years ago to Syrian parents around the area which is now known as Syria, just north of Israel, but now is living in Rome. But for hundreds of years, he lived in that desert area, around that area. Became fully aware of himself as a master at the age of 4. Didn't have to go into adulthood to become aware of who he was. It was early on. And since then has been living using the same physical body. Now, he doesn't age. So even though he's hundreds of years old, he looks quite young, maybe early 30s, very healthy, and those kind of things. The images of Jesus, the painted in the Renaissance paintings with the blonde hair and blue eyes, I think kind of have that image of who he really is, but he really is of Middle Eastern descent, so he looks more like that. And I think there's a picture of the Master Jesus that a nun in Africa took. He was visiting this nun in the 80s, and she took a picture of him. And it looks strikingly similar to the thought form that most Christians have of Jesus, with the long hair and the beard. I don't know if he created that body to look like what people are thinking that he looks like or whatever, but it doesn't really matter. That's kind of how he looks. But like I said, he doesn't age, but he doesn't also need to be here. But the other way that masters create bodies is they are born in the natural way. And I'm speaking now of somebody like Sai Baba, who lived amongst the population of the people. Some people saw him as a master, but most people just saw him as a great teacher or whatever. He aged in the normal way and then eventually passed away within the same amount of time that it would take for a person to be born, grow up, and then eventually pass away. And Sai Baba passed away in 2016, but his point in evolution was very, very high, higher than actually Maitreya's. He was not a planetary Christ, but a cosmic Christ. And we'll come back again, it's been said, one last time as another Sai Baba. He was the first Sai Baba, and then he became Sai Baba that I have this picture of him, that passed away the same year that Ben passed away, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And then we'll come back at some point for one last and final time. But he aged, and the reason why he did that was so he wouldn't freak people out. But anyway, but he was actually quite healthy, even though he was in his 60s and 70s. And there was reports of him being able to stick his arms out straight and hold up people with very little ease. And he said he wasn't using any spiritual effort to do it. It was just how the body is. And the reason why people's bodies are so weak is because of the diet. Anyway, so he said you live a pure life, your physical body can be quite strong. And then lastly, and this gets to Maitreya, his body is what's called a Mahavarupa, which is a word that means it's a self-created body. So some of these masters create the body through thought. And Maitreya had a body that he was living in with, I know it sounds kind of funny, but he was living in for millions of years in the Himalayas. And then right before he left his remote abode in the 17,500 feet up in the late 70s, or mid to late 70s, to go into London on July 19th, 1977, he created a new Mahavarupa through thought. According to Benjamin Creme's master, this is the first time a Mahavarupa was created in this way, but it's sensitive enough to still receive the higher stimulus that he was able to receive, but also strong enough, dense enough to be able to live at our level. So Maitreya is currently and will be throughout the next age overshadowed by two massive avatars. One, the avatar of synthesis, and the other one, the spirit of peace and equilibrium. And they're not even they're so advanced that they can't even live in our solar system, according to Benjamin Creme. And he's being overshadowed in the same way that he overshadowed Jesus in Palestine. Constant moment to moment. So the energies of both these great avatars are flowing through him at tremendous potencies and causing the world that in change that we're seeing. So it's not only Maitreya and his energy, but it's also these higher energies from these two great spiritual avatars. So this Mahavarupa of his, this self-created body, is sensitive enough to be able to be overshadowed by these two great avatars, but also dense enough and strong enough to live at our level. So according to Benjamin Creme's master, I'll say it again, I said it earlier, but I'll say it one more time, is the first time this has ever happened. So it's quite an extraordinary thing. But he's totally conscious and aware of who he is. And I've, in a very rudimentary way, described kind of the experience of Maitreya when he's wherever he is. If he was talking to a person or a group of people, or if he was giving an interview to the media or whatever, he could be sitting in a chair or standing up talking to whatever the situation is, be just as physical as you or I are. We touch, you could touch his hand and it's just as physical as anything that you would experience in a normal way. He will be totally relaxed, focused on what you're saying, addressing what you're saying, and not going off on a tangent like I like to do. But at the same time, doing and thinking an infinite number of things. Anything from sending energy to another planet, healing somebody, saving somebody from an accident, overshadowing a disciple in another area who's doing this, creating a familiar for somebody that looks a certain way, that he could be doing a million different things, or if not more than that, at the same time. and you would never know because he wouldn't tell you, you know. So, but like again, it's quite an extraordinary feat of achievement for any of these masters to be able to create a body the way that Maitreya did. Hopefully that answers that question. What countries would the 40 sages emerge from? Only Tibet or many other countries? No, if you're referring to the masters, I don't know if all 40 are going to come out right at once, but they were living in the remote areas of the world, not just in Tibet, but in northern India and the Himalayas, I guess, would be the greatest concentration of these masters. Because who wants to go walking that high up in the mountains? So that, they would just be away from, humanity. To me, if I was a master living for the last 100,000 years away from humanity, I would choose an island in the South Pacific. But that's just my personal taste. I wouldn't necessarily want to deal with the cold. These masters don't have to deal with cold. They can think themselves warm and not have to deal with it. But me, I like a nice sunset over the ocean, that kind of thing. But yeah, right now, as far as I know, there are masters in the 5 planetary centers, New York, London, Geneva, Darjeeling, and Tokyo, Moscow, and Rome. The one in Rome is the Master Jesus. Ben went on over the next few years and mentioned that there was a master in the Ozark Mountains in the United States, San Francisco, on the outskirts of San Francisco and on the outskirts of Los Angeles. And then he eventually mentioned something about Paris and Beijing. So I don't know if there are any other masters in any other areas, but that's what he had mentioned so far. So hopefully that answers that question. All right. Alfred, I'm glad you thought what I said was funny. I meant it as a joke, so appreciate that comment. Thank you. Let's see. Marilyn, what did you have to say? He said, thank you for your explanation, and you're welcome as always, and I really love it when people comment and ask questions. All I know is that the light patterns, and you're talking about one of the many miracle signs called patterns of light that Ben used to talk about all the time, are on the wall opposite my house. Oh, that's interesting. And have been accredited by Mr. Creme. They are up this road and on the walls of adjacent roads. One can also see that his light with the inner vision, which is indisputable proof so far as I'm concerned. Well, thank you for the comment. Yeah, those light patterns. The one that was the most extraordinary that I've seen photos of. Now, most of these light patterns, they appear on buildings or on a parking lot or something like that, and they have an image of a cross maybe or some kind of shape in the center of a circle. And they don't always appear because if it's cloudy outside, you wouldn't see them because they need the sun. And at certain times of the day is when they would appear, and other times they don't. And then as the seasons change, you have to adjust the time in which you see it. Like, I know they're not in my neighborhood, but they're across the street in a neighborhood across the street on a couple houses. And in the summertime, they appear later in the evening than they do in the wintertime. But they do appear on sunny days. So as I'm driving, I was kind of looking, they're out today. They don't have any healing qualities, according to Benjamin Creme, like the crosses of light did in the church that I saw in Knoxville, Tennessee, or homes in El Monte, California, or some I think it was a doctor's office or something like that in the Philippines or something like that. And I don't know if any new crosses of light and windows have been discovered over the past few years, but those were created by the masters. The patterns of light were created by our space brothers and UFOs. Now, the other thing too that I thought was interesting too was the most extraordinary light pattern I saw was someone in the Share International group in Atlanta. They were doing a peace march in Nashville about 20 years ago, and she took pictures of all these light patterns on the windows of buildings. And if you look at the video that I have on my channel about the light patterns, you can see images of it, but it looks like Hebrew. And Benjamin Creme, when he saw the images, she asked him what language was that, and he said it was an ancient language that wasn't used anymore, but it looked like Hebrew with three characters, and then the first letter was underlined. But he didn't say what they meant, but I thought that was quite extraordinary because they didn't look like a typical pattern of light, but those were in Nashville. All right. James Wambidi, what did you have to say? A section of Christians, most likely Roman Catholics, have infiltrated theosophy with false information. They have shifted Lord Maitreya, Lord Gautama, and others to new positions. in the spiritual hierarchy in order to accommodate their hitherto one and only Son of God, Lord Jesus, in a higher position. They allege that Lord Maitreya has already handed over the office of world teacher to Lord Jesus and Lord Kuthumi. They have even composed songs welcoming the dual world teacher, Christ Jesus, and Kuthumi in that position. Okay, well, whatever. As my daughter would say, whatevs. The thing about belief, James and everybody else, that I've started to learn in the early second half of my life here on planet Earth, hopefully. I'm 52, so it's taken me a long time to learn this. But the thing about belief is just belief. Misinformation is just misinformation. It doesn't taint the truth of anything. Now, I don't personally believe anything that these people would be putting out that you're claiming or doing to the Theosophical Society, and it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? It's just the same thing as when I sit in church with my wife, and she's Baptist, and we go to First Baptist Atlanta here, which is a very fundamentalist Baptist church. I don't believe 90% of what they talk about. I like their songs, I like the music, I love the music. I think Christian, and gospel music is wonderful. But when the pastor starts speaking, I would say I probably believe or agree with about 10% of what he says. But to me, it doesn't change the truth either way. Even my beliefs change. That doesn't change the truth of anything. So I know people who believe that the earth is flat. To me, it doesn't change the truth that the earth isn't flat. You know what I mean? It's just what they believe, right? And if they can get enough people to agree upon it, well, then we'll probably go back to putting it into textbooks in school, and discuss it in schools that the earth is flat now. And it was never a globe. I don't know. It's all about agreement too. So beliefs really don't take hold of anything until more and more people agree upon that belief, whether it's true or not. But at the end of the day, as Gautama Buddha said, there's no religion or there's no belief really higher than truth. The truth is the truth. And as Maitreya says, the self alone matters. And he said that he said he comes to rid the world of the crime of separation. I think that's how he put it. And he says that he affirms that as his purpose. But the only way to really become aware of the self and then eventually totally identify with the self is to practice what Maitreya always says: honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment. So if an organization is shifting its beliefs and things, that happens all the time, but it doesn't taint the truth that we are all sharing the same divinity. You know what I mean? Hopefully that helps. And hopefully it perhaps quells some of the frustrations you might be feeling toward that. All right. So Timothy, what did you have to ask? Do you think it is very likely for Maitreya to return within the next 2 to 3 years, 2026? I think that you're asking the wrong question. So I'm not saying that to be flippant. I'm just saying that I think, because I've even asked that question, and I've heard people in the Share International group say, do you think Maitreya will return? Maitreya's already returned, is for one thing. He's already in the world, the everyday world. He's always been in the world, but he didn't come from another planet or galaxy or from heaven or from some other dimension. He's always been living on this planet, along with some of these masters. So to ask, when is he going to return? Well, he returned on July 19th, 1977 into the everyday world. To ask the question, when will he be on TV? That's already happened, because Ben already made the announcement in January of 2010 that at some point he had already done his first television interview. And since then, up until the point that Ben passed away, he said it was probably dozens of times. So I guess another question would be, when will you recognize him on TV? Would be a question that I ask myself. You know what I mean? Not that when is he going to return, but when am I going to recognize him on TV? I may have already seen him. You may have already seen him on TV and just not recognized him, because he's not saying anything that would trigger you to think that it was him. So when will and then the other question would be, is when will humanity start to wake up to the problems of the world enough that Maitreya can start to galvanize that voice because there really is no voice for anything right now. There are pockets of people starting to march for peace, but it's not enough, and it's not long enough, and it's not sustained enough, and it's not powerful enough to move the political dead weights to do something about it. Because there's too much corruption and squabbling in I know in the United States, I'm sure it's like this in other countries, that nothing's getting done, especially here in the United States. Literally nothing's getting done. No laws are really getting passed. They're not doing anything for anybody. They're just squabbling back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And Benjamin Creme's master wrote an article not too long ago entitled America Adrift, and how true that is. There's really no leadership in the United States. None. You know what I mean? So like I said, nothing's getting done. And the other thing too that I see is a word that I actually learned from Ben. I'd never really heard this word or paid attention to it prior to him saying it about 20 years ago. He used the word malaise, and how that it's a disease. It's like a psychological disease amongst the society. You know, individuals can have malaise, right? But as a society, as a country, as a group of people, can also experience a malaise. And I think that this generation of people are just getting beaten down and beaten down and beaten down and beaten down and beaten down to the point where I just can't take it anymore. Whatever. Just do whatever you want to do. You know, Biden, you and Trump are the exact same people. I might not even vote. What does it matter? You know, and that's kind of the attitude that people have. You know, the environment, they keep saying it's bad, but we're still here. So whatever, I don't care. I just want to get on with my day and, you know, and then go home and nuke my supper and take a nap. You know, I mean, that's pretty much the psyche of a lot of people. So when will humanity wake up to the problems? When will they see that it's in our best interest to do something? You know, our survival depends on whether we do it or not. You know what I mean? That is the question that I would say. And could it be in 2 or 3 or 4 years that people start to really wake up to the problems and recognize Maitreya on TV? Yeah, very possible. Very, 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 very possible. There's also a strong likelihood it might take longer than that. You know, Benjamin Creme's master gave a stern warning that the environmentalists that were sounding the alarm about the environment, their projection of several decades was too long, that is not going to be that long. We didn't have that much time to fix the problem. And I think that time has already come and gone. Now, I have it on good authority. I don't have an authority to speak of, but I'm just saying I have it on good authority that we're still got time left, that it's not too late. I think that we are being helped in a lot of different ways, not only from these masters, but also from the space brothers out there. And there's a lot of evidence about their work and activity, but most people don't know what they're doing. They think they're here to take us over. They think they're here in some kind of nefarious way. But all the space brothers, all the UFO activity are here on a spiritual mission to help keep us alive, keep the planet alive, until we learn not to destroy the planet in the way that we're doing through carbon emissions, but also through our use of nuclear power in the way that we're processing it now, which nobody's talking about. So, but I do think that what Benjamin Creme's master said is coming true about the stock markets. Maitreya made a prediction that the stock market would crash back in the 80s. And to some degree it's happened, and other degrees it hasn't happened quite yet. And it's been propped up by the forces of darkness to keep things going. In 2008, it looked like that was it, right? And Benjamin Creme's master, and this is what I think is coming true based on what he said back in 2008. He said if the markets were just left to just crumble, that would be it. Humanity would have learned their lesson back, 16 years ago. And we would never have to find ourselves back in that situation again, where the markets are ruling the world, where the markets are controlling our leaders' votes and so forth. And we would be living in a totally different world according to the masters. And this was what he said. That was one scenario, that the markets would just crumble. The other thing he said that could happen, which is I think is happening, or has happened and is happening, is that the markets would go to even a higher high. And he said if it was left to do that, it would be even worse for humanity when it finally does come crashing down. So it wasn't going to be quite as bad if it had just gone down in 2008, but now it's going up and 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 up, and it's just higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. When it finally, that bubble finally does burst, then we're going to experience some real economic pain. And according to Maitreya, humanity really won't be ready to accept the principle of sharing until we experience that financial pain, especially here in the United States. So I think that's what he's waiting on. And he might have to come out before that actually happens, when humanity still is not quite prepared for it, and come out and start to say things with more of a sense of urgency. I guess, let me clarify what I'm saying. Okay. Come to more of a sense of urgency about what he's saying, to where more and more people recognize him before that crash happens. But we're headed for a crash. It is coming. I mean, you can see it. Inflation here in the United States. People are struggling. Rents going through the roof. More and more people homeless, living in cars still making $60,000, $70,000 a year. They just can't afford to live in a house or an apartment like they could. And yet the super rich are getting richer and richer and richer and richer and richer and richer and richer. It can't sustain itself. It cannot sustain itself. Anybody that thinks that capitalism is going to be like it is today 200 years from now is living in la la land. But yet that's what we think. It's an ideological myth. You know what I mean? That we're going to live like that. And the only thing that's going to once humanity comes to its senses and realizes they've been living this myth, this dream of the promise of riches through the markets, once they wake up to the truth that that's not real, that isn't sustainable, that's what's creating the tensions in the world, the divisions in the world, the injustices in the world, then humanity is going to go, now what? Now what do we do? Do we live in a total state of anarchy with no economic structures, no political structures that are in ruins, those kind of things? Are we going to go back into the Middle Ages? Now we have nuclear weapons, and anybody could then take it. I mean, it would be disastrous. Or we listen to this teacher on TV who says, why not try the principle of sharing? You got all the food you need. You have all the resources on this planet. Nothing. If the economies of the world collapsed, the food would still be available to people. The building products would still be available to people. The ways to clothe people would still be available to people. The trains that could schlep it from point A to point B, the boats that schlep it from point A to point B are still available to us. We would just have to change our priority. Will we still hoard it for wealth and profit? So maybe we can make more profit in the future, or we would just say, okay, let's try the principle of sharing. That's the key. It's all the key to life on planet Earth 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, 1,000,000 years from now is all based on whether that humanity try and accept the principle of sharing in our lifetime. Nothing else is going to get us to that point. You know what I mean? So hope and no wars and no walls that we build. No separating country from country is going to sustain and create justice and create peace. If you don't believe me, check out the link that I have in there about the Marshall Plan. It created peace amongst the nations who tried it after World War II. That's all we need to do globally. It would change everything. It would ease the tensions. It would eliminate injustice. It would eliminate starvation nearly overnight or within a few days. Hunger would be gone. And as Federico Lorca, the Spanish poet, once said, we have no idea, I'm paraphrasing, we have no idea the spiritual explosion that would happen amongst all the people when hunger is eradicated finally on planet Earth. Quite an extraordinary experience if you can just visualize that in your head. What would life be like, even if you're not the one that's hungry, to know that there's not one person in this world that went hungry that day? It would be better than any miracle you could ever have. You know what I mean? But it only takes the principle of sharing in order to do that. That's it. So hopefully that answers your question. I love you guys. Thank you so much, everybody, for your questions, for your comments. I look forward to putting up videos in the very near future. You guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Take care. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.